to our Groundskeeper chat series. I am your host, Meg Kruger. I am joined by my co-host, Christopher Bell.
Hello, hello.
Which we are now, what is this, like episode 6? And I still have not given him an opportunity to ask a question. So maybe I'll let him kick it off.
No. I'm okay.
Do we need to get a talking stick? Do we need to hand the talking stick?
Yes.
Jalapeno on a stick. That kind of stick?
I have a problem.
Am I dating myself with comedy there?
Well, yeah, we know you're old, but
Who is that, Pez dispenser?
Jalapeno on a stick guy? Do you remember that?
No.
You don't remember that?
No.
sorry.
No.
Sorry,
Okay.
Chris.
All right.
Last night you missed it at dinner, and I said I was going to keep it in my back pocket for a special occasion. But you were reading your menu with a light, and then several minutes later, Leah was like, she was making a joke. She was like, oh, "Dude, it's so dark in here. We're going to be like those old people reading the menus with their light."
She
and
did
you
not.
missed it, and I
Oh,
was
boy.
like, I'm going to save that for when he needs an ego boost.
Oh,
so
that's-
there you
Let's
go.
let's not be ageists, right? I mean, I think there's 3 people over 40 on this panel at least.
Hey, Ryan, at least I only use the light. I mean, the worst is when I use the light and I also use the camera so I can zoom in
Well,
and read the menu.
Yeah.
So I didn't pull that one yesterday.
That's rough times.
I think when you get the chain necklace with your readers that fold out on those, you've reached peak old dude.
It's actually, it sounds
Peak old
appealing.
dude.
It
Yeah.
does.
Convenient.
Yeah, really convenient and practical.
I think trifocals are going to come back in 2025. There's my prediction.
That's
I
your
love
prediction?
it. There we
All right, see you
go.
guys
Bold,
later.
Take
bold
off the
prediction right
headphones.
there.
End
He's done.
Very
show.
bold prediction.
Well, so now I've given Chris his moment in the spotlight on the Groundskeeper
Okay,
chat.
I'll mute myself now.
Exactly the way he wanted it to be. But we have 2 guests joining us for this episode, Mr. Ryan DeMay and Mr. Stephen Lord. And they have coined themselves dream job quitters.
Listen, Steve told the story in the talk. We've already done it, so we're not like tipping our hand. But
Yeah.
Steve told the story in the talk about. Well, you tell it just
Yeah.
real quick.
So the first pioneer was the Pioneers in the Field
Yep.
stuff. What was that, 2021?
Yep, I think so. You were the COVID year, I think, where we didn't
Yes.
get to go to conference.
That's right. So we met the next conference. We all
Yep.
met together, and I had just transitioned over to Advanced Turf Solutions, left the Reds, and someone that was, in a group there just stops me in the show and comes up and says, "Hey, just want to give you a heads up. You quit my dream job."
Oh, my gosh.
And I'm sitting there dumbfounded. I'm like, "What do you say?" Okay, cool. I had no answer. I don't even know what I said to him. I was speechless, and I was just like, "Oh, okay. Well, I'll mull that one
Sorry
over for a
about
while. Cool. You can go get it. It was open. it." But yeah, no. So I mean, I had joked with Ryan about it, and it was one of those things that we were like, quit dream jobs. Dream jobs are relative, right? Like everybody has a mountain they're climbing. They get to a point, and then you find a bigger mountain, right? Or you find the next step, and it just resonated when we were joking back and forth with it, like, who's to say what's your dream job, how long that dream lasts? We all have dreams change as you get older. So it's it was just funny that it took me aback for a while. And I didn't know how to answer. And you and I were like, we'd bounce stuff back and forth on, and colloquially it was just like a joke after a while. Like, oh yeah, you're the guy who quits a dream job.
Well, and I think it was just that. What's interesting is that Steve and I are a lot alike. We didn't know each other until 2019, something like that.
Yeah.
And I think there's 2 cool parts to the story. The one cool part is that hey, here's a major league groundskeeper that's interacting with a Parks and Rec guy. A lot of times that would be like, I'm too hoity-toity or whatever. And never did I get that vibe. And the more that I learned about Steve and who he was and what he was about and everything like that was that we lived a very parallel life. We started off working on golf courses. We fell in love with grass. We found a way to make it our career. We kept climbing. We were never, ever satisfied. We're problem-solving junkies. We embrace periods of uncomfortability and progress and everything like that. And we're just nerds. And so
To put it mildly, right?
well, we are. And so the whole dream job quitters, when I heard that, it just resonated with me and quite frankly just pissed me off. And usually, spite is a great motivator to get started with. It's not a great one to finish with.
But it's a good one to start with.
It's a great one to start with. Oh gosh, you gotta love it. So, when he said that, we thought, and just in the conversations we had, because he left in December of 20.
Yeah.
He left in December of 20. I had already quit a dream job once before that. So I was a golf course superintendent, had a great paying job on top of the mountain. It was exactly what I wanted to do coming out of school. I worked 10 years or more of my life to do it. And then one day I was like, yeah, I can't work 80 hours a week. I'm going to get killed by my wife. I'm going to get divorced, you know. So this is basically, you know, the math works out that it's not worth half your stuff.
Yeah.
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 So, you know, I had already done that and been through that, and I thought about that when he said that, because some people were saying at the time, like, man, are you okay?
Crazy?
Like, what are you doing here? So, you know, I watched from afar as Steve did that, and he said that comment, and it was just like it clicked. It was like, you know, there is a process to this of like, you know, acceptance, awareness of who you are and where you are in the marketplace of work and everything like that. And like, it's not just about dollars and cents. It's not just about the number of hours you work or the prestige of the name that's on your resume. Like, there is so much more to it. And so, you know, you can talk about like emotional IQ and things like that, but like Steve was really in tune with that. And just as we talked and, you know, more and more about it, we joked for, I think for about 2 years, we're like, oh, we're going to do a session at SFMA, man. It's going to be great, you know? And
That voice, exactly.
it was like legitimately like it reads in the script, you know, all right, act like a bro voice. I don't know. Anyway, so it was whenever the proposals were due. And I said, hey, dude, I'm going to just write this up and send it in and we'll see what happens. So lo and behold, I thought, you know, when I sent it off, you know, I always have these moments of right when I get to like the precipice of doing something, I cross it, like, because there's no better feeling than the point of no return.
Yeah.
But then I'm like, man, that's gonna probably piss some people off that read that. They're gonna be like,
I mean, reading the title on it, I was like, because he sent me the rundown for it, and he's like, what do you think? I was like, it's either going to resonate with somebody or it's going to be oh God, we can't put them up to talk about that. Like, you can't talk about quitting dream jobs and this industry. We're going to be freaked out. People are going to leave. Like, you know, like this is not a good idea. But no, I mean, you killed it. You put the title together and I'm like, it's hot enough that if someone has interest in this and this resonates with anybody on that panel, like, there's a shot we can give this one. Sure.
Well, and even Meg commented when she called me and asked me to do this and said, hey, like, your title, like, what's that all about? So what, I mean, I'm actually curious. I'm going to ask the host a question. What was your first reaction when you read that title? And you don't have to, like, you know, don't fluff it or anything like that. Like, just give it a straight nope.
Well, I mean, I saw your name. I think your name was listed first, and I was like, okay, would welcome him back anytime. We just did our year in review episode, and we listened back to your episode from last year. And we're like, it would be rude to like only play your episode, but like you were you were the big highlight.
Well, Meg, Ryan obviously knew that because he listened to the year-end episode.
Of course.
I did. No, I saw my picture up there. I was like, oh man, look at that.
So I saw your name first, and then when it was paired with Steven, I was like, because you really intrigued me. Like, I wanted to know more on how does the guy go from running a crew that like in the industry was known as like, this is a moment in time. These are the people, like, you guys just had such a culture. And I had done that profile on you. And then, you know, very shortly after, it was like, you know, I'm going to switch gears. But then you've had the success on the other side. And I know that from seeing you here at conference, and you still have these relationships, you still have that camaraderie, and then you still post, and you seem to have this, you know, like, you're at peace with the balance that you've created.
Sure.
You get to be out there with the groundskeepers. You get to be with them from a different point of view and helping them. But at the end of the day, you're back home with the family, or you're back in your truck. And I love when you've got a full truck of product and you're like, hell yeah, this is what I get to do today. Yeah. So I will say you were the initial bait, your name. But then when I saw him, I was like, now I don't think I'll have as much success reaching out to Steven and being like, hey, will you come and talk about that? I knew you would have to volunteer him to do it.
Ooh, wow. I can be convincing.
That he had to come onto the groundskeeper chat.
Didn't take much convincing. No, yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I think that is actually really cool to hear, because Steve said something in the talk that even resonated with me, and I thought it was something that was big in my mind, but until he said it and, like, you know, vocalized it, and it was, you know, you have to be able to call your own shot.
Yeah.
And the whole point behind that of what he was saying is that, you know, if you get to a point, and we talked about this in the seminar, was like, there's a lot of folks that get burned out. Like, I don't know if you can do this job without getting burned out.
Yeah, I mean, people have stretches that get burned out in, but like when you get truly burned out, like where you're like past the point of return,
Like
and
crying
it's anything.
Home.
You see people, you hear the story, so and so flipped out on somebody and there was no comeback, right? They found a new job, right? And yeah, to me, it was always, I got into this, and at any point you want to control your destiny, right? You want to be able to call your own shot. If I'm gonna make a move, if I'm gonna make the next move, I want to be in control of the situation. Because the worst thing you hear is like, that guy got fired. No kidding.
Yep.
Man, I hope he's doing all right. Has anyone reached out to him? And we're a tight industry. People reach out to people, but it's a tough spot when you're the one who has to find the job and after the fact.
Yep. Well, and I will say you're one of the first ones, and I've only been ingrained in the industry for 6 years. So you were one of the first ones for me who, had that premier job and then went on to the other side. So in my mind, I'm sure there were others before you, but you really created a blueprint, in my mind at least, for doing it and doing it successfully. And, I put like Amy Fowdy in the same category, and I put Weston now in that same category. Ryan DeMay.
One just walked by, Tim Van Loo.
Yep, yeah. Tim Van Loo.
Tim was well ahead of me, no doubt.
How, it just is, I think you could look at people like you and be like, oh man, that sucks that they had to, but I see it as a hopeful thing that like you can have your time in a position, but you don't have to leave this industry. You don't have to leave the camaraderie, the network, all the things that really are the, the highlights of this industry. You can stay ingrained and you can always go back, of course. But I think that you both have created a blueprint where it's like, you can, like you said, control your own destiny and still be in the coolest industry in the world.
Well, I don't know. There's some like catharsis that maybe for you. We're just John right now, right? But so like there's some catharsis of like leaving when you're on top, like knowing that hey, like you said, the culture was awesome. Like what they had in 2020 was like one of the coolest environments to work in. It had to be.
That was a lot of fun that year.
Yeah.
As weird as awful as that season was.
Yeah.
Exactly.
There was so much fun in that as well.
But that only comes from like you can't like make that energy in that moment. Like it has to be that way to get that bad. And you're like, oh, you know what? We're gonna have a good time. We're gonna do our work. We're gonna work our asses off. We're gonna have fun doing it. And that's just the way it's gonna be. But to be able to have the courage and like the conviction that, all right, listen, call my own shot. Like I'm there. All those other things are great, but like I can't remember who told me this like one time. Like, oh, you need to look at your life and like music albums. Mm-hmm. And I thought
eras.
About what's that?
In eras.
In era. Well, yeah. Hey, Tay. but it was true. I mean, well, she's a good one. But I had another friend that said this one time, and it's always stuck with me about music, and it makes you think about your career. Especially as Steve talks about it, is that music is the thing that makes you either brim over with joy or sadness. Right? Music is the thing that either takes you back or keeps you moving forward. And you could really say the same thing about your career if you look at it in chapters or in albums to say, hey, man, that was a great time in my life. I loved working for the Reds. I loved working for the city of Columbus. Like, I drive past my old place and I think, God, like, I got my ass kicked there. I had some of the toughest days of my career there, but damn it, like, I learned a lot. And I would not be here if I didn't do that.
And how awful it would be if you had to drive by that every day and be like, oh my gosh.
Call your own shot.
Like, I left there. You have that anxious pit where it was like, man, that was bad blood. I left on bad terms. Like, that would be 10 times worse. Like, so if you could never walk back into the Great American Ballpark and like, have that time with them, like that would be 10 times worse. He's like, oh no, he's on the red list.
Is that the guy that was on bath salts that went to work that day? No, he just had a bad day, man. Like, he just didn't eat his Wheaties, I guess.
4 tart pulls later, he just went off the deep end, I think.
And then the intern snapped the quick coupler off, and he just went ape. No, but like that. Gosh. There's we talked about this, about the awareness and everything like that, about how to find that first of all acceptance, like. Man, I think I might need to go.
Mm-hmm. Oh, you put it perfectly. When we were just talking through just generics for slides, and he was like, the when I have to quit, right? And it's like no one ever thinks about it like in blunt terms, like, man, I have to quit this job. Like, it's going the wrong way or it's heading the wrong way, or I know where this is going to go eventually. But like the thought of like I have to quit my job because I'm looking for something better or something something more, approving in life for me down the road. That, like, to put it bluntly like that, just I was reading through your info when you texted me that day, and I was like, that's a good point. Like, I didn't really think about it as I was quitting the Reds. I was finding something else I'd preferred to do better, but like, yeah, I guess it is. You quit your job either way. So,
Yeah, I mean, it's semantics. And
Yes.
I'm I don't know. I get really worked up about semantics sometimes. But regardless, the whole point of that is knowing when to quit. And I shared this in the seminar, and we riffed on this for a while. I mean, this is darn near half the talk was like the whole, like, how do you know when it's time? And really, like, we summed it up with, again, I just go back to all these, like, axioms and things that were said to me over the years. And it was like, I had a boss when I was probably 22 said, when it's time to go when it's not fun anymore.
Yeah.
And of course, 22-year-old me is like, oh, this is great. Like, this is the greatest job in the world. Why would anybody want to leave? Like, you're crazy. And sure enough, like what Steve says, the reality sets in. Family happens, life happens, desires with your career and what you want to do, what you want to experience.
Things you can never change or improve in that position. I mean, there's a host of things as you break down what is something that makes the job great. Oh, well, there's also these detractors. What are these detractors could ever fix?
Well, let's talk about those. Let's lean into that, because there was kind of a negative tone a little bit in the first half of this. It was like, I think there were people in the room that were legitimately like, man, like, is it this bad? Like, is it really this bad?
Yeah, what am I getting into?
Exactly.
Oh my gosh.
Well,
yeah.
But I think what we was trying to do was more of like a real talk situation. So, like, some of those detractors were, do I have the support of my boss? We've had long conversations about seats at the table and everything like that. So what happens? Okay, you go through all that stuff, what we talked about. You present all the information, everything like that, and you got a well-founded argument.
Do the 10-step program.
And not the 12. That's if you stay. That's if you stay too long.
That's if you stay way too long.
But if you take it and break it all down, and you say, "Hey, this is what I'm all about. This is what I want to do," and they're like, "Nope, we're good." Like, how many times can that happen before it breaks your spirit?
Yeah.
100%.
The hard no, that's just like, yeah. I mean, we heard it, but we didn't really hear it. It didn't process. It's not going anywhere. Like, yeah, that's some of those things that you just know you'll never change, right? And
It's time to seek life elsewhere. And I think that's the hard thing, is that maybe, quitting, whatever term you want to use for it, right, is that you have to seek life elsewhere, and it's scary. It's scary. I think that's
Yeah.
Well, that's one thing that we didn't talk a lot about. Maybe we can talk here. It's just like, okay, I mean, how scared were you? And I want to answer the question too, but
I mean, it was a big discussion in our household, right? Is like, one, are you going to be good at this, right? Like, you're going into something. My wife goes, you haven't sold anything since tickets to the basketball arena at college. Like,
those smart tickets sell themselves.
You're going to be able to put food on the table.
Those things sell themselves, right? You're picking the phone up, right? So I was like, yeah, that's a good point, but like we talked, I guess, on the flip side, we talked about like the things you realize you're good at, right? And as you're looking for that new position, like, I was like, you can be outgoing, you can be introverted, you can be all these different things personality-wise in sales and succeed, but like, you just have to know, like, you're gonna put the effort in, you're gonna put the time into it. You have the work effort and everything to do it. Like, so my wife, I'm like, I'm not afraid of it. Like, there's no part of this I don't think I'm gonna do well. It's just, you got to try something, right? Like you alluded to with the group. Like I was probably the more pessimist when we were giving our presentation on this, and Ryan came around twice. It's like, not to disagree with Steve, but like everyone in this room can do more than they're doing right now, right? Like, as an industry, we pigeonhole ourselves into like, hey, this is my max. This is what I can do. Like, this is my comfort zone. So like, to be afraid of something, yeah. I mean, I interviewed for another position before I joined ATS. And it was one of those that I went through the process, and I got all the way through being offered. And it was like, I don't think that's the right sales job for me to jump into on this. And I was really open with them on it, and they appreciated the honesty. But it was like, if I'm going to leave and I'm going to call my shot, I want to make sure it is the position that I feel I'm going to be the most in line to succeed with.
And to your point in the seminar, the best way to look for a job is when you have one that is good and solid, and that you can still, even if you have to do it mindlessly or, not have your complete heart into it, like for a little while, right?
Yep.
And we talked about timeline and everything like that. So, no, I mean, that's totally different, scenario for me doing my own thing. But the scare factor was like, okay, like, what do I got to do to get back to whole? And this goes for anybody. I don't care if you're going to go get a 9 to 5 or whatever. It's like, what do I got to do to get back to whole? Okay, well, like, hey, I've got marketable skills, and like, if this really, doesn't work out, I've got other options. Like this isn't the only thing. We're very like, and it's any industry, but very feast or famine. Like, oh, if this doesn't work out, I'm going to lose my house. You know, my kids are going to hate me. My wife's going to be mad. It's like, no, like it's not going to go down that, especially if you had a good support system and all that. But the timeline thing, you put that on our slides, and I thought that was interesting because I never really thought of it like in this continuum of, oh, like if I don't, do this by, next spring, I'm going to be, right. I got to stick around or whatever.
I mean, you look at it. I mean, this with the seasonal capacity of this industry, right? Like, so in my head, it was like, if I don't do something by February 1st, I'm signing up for the next season, right? Like, you just know you're locked in, right? I'm not the guy who's going to leave a team on the hook after the day after opening day and be like, yeah, I'm out of here. Here's my 2 weeks notice. Thanks for opening day. Peace. Like, so, I mean, you look at that, but then when you take full actual account of yourself and where you are and, how marketable you are, where you think you're going to find a good fit, where you think you can even get an interview, building that timeline is everything. I mean, it's, anyone can quit their job tomorrow. It's just, do they have anything in place that you can actually make something with on the back end? And like, I had somebody come up after our talk and they're like, hey, I kind of sat there and thought about it and listened to it and was like, as much as I want to leave my job right now, there are some skills I need to. It was a younger guy. He's in the front third of his career, and he's like, "There's a number of skills that I need to get better at before I can even think about." And not, he was selling himself a little short, just like Ryan said. But like, it was one of those things that's like, "Hey, I probably need to spend a little more time on X, Y, and Z, and then maybe next year's the year I start looking, for that next jump." And it's like, just building your timeline, and depending on the position and how entrenched or not entrenched you are in there, but.
Yeah, and we said that too. I think that was we talked like during our 6 minutes of preparation for this seminar.
I'm seeing that you guys are working through the prep right now, and it already happened.
I mean, this is like a post-game film session right now.
I love it.
I feel like Coach is going to come on here and yell at me.
Well, they're gonna Son's gonna come over and be like, membership went down like 50% after those two.
Bro,
a lot of people are leaving.
Everybody left.
Yeah.
I love it.
Well, you put that on me then. I'll take that.
You know what? I think there's a huge revenue opportunity. We just need to create a new membership class called Quitters.
Yeah,
I love it.
I'll be the first one. I'll be
Quitters.
Q001 will be on my new
Make
membership
sure you
number.
call Weston too. Get him in there.
But listen, there has to be some part of you that looks at these situations, and I don't care if it's timeline, skill development, whatever. And Steve's talked about it, I've talked about it, but man, I can't remember if we had anything in the actual slides, but I just want to say it again and go on record. It's like a lot of our people, not everybody, but a lot of our people are capable of way more. So like the example I used in the talk was like, hey, here's Steve. Here's a guy that managed, for the better part of 14 years, managed 2.5 acres of turf and about 15,000 square foot of dirt. And that was his job. So it would be easy for him to box himself in and say, well, that's all the bigger I can manage. That's all I can handle. Not looking at the fact of like all the events that he had to help put on and all the coordination, communication with people that know nothing about what we do, don't care, don't give a rip. And, communicating through that all, managing through that all, getting his team to buy in, getting people to buy into, hey, we have, I'm just talking them up right now, but I don't care.
I love it.
But like, hey, we've got this perennial ryegrass field here in Cincinnati, Ohio, which is like literally the armpit of the country.
What?
Mm-hmm.
No doubt. Yeah.
Like the middle of the armpit.
Like the sweatiest, just most disgusting part right on the river. Right.
Right.
It's
The part,
1,000,
it's
right?
that fold of skin you can't get the deodorant in. It's real bad. But no, so I'm sorry, I had to go there.
It's just got so much further.
I
along
love
than
it.
we
I
needed to.
appreciate it.
Oh, people are thinking about, man, do I have one of those right now? It's okay, folks. If you're listening, just reapply.
The wheels came completely off that for a second.
But the whole idea here was that with the he sold his whole ownership, on, hey, we're going to replace the field.
Yep.
With something that we have never done before, in the history of this ballpark. So like those are all skills again
100%.
that are, you're going to have to go into somebody's lawn care, business and say, that fertilizer that you use is no good. You should use something better, and here's the reasons why. No different than selling a field renovation.
Yeah, I mean,
literally no different.
I thought about it at one point. I was like, I've been selling. My wife had said that. She was like, "What you haven't sold something since college, right?" And I was like, I've been selling something all along. You're selling user experiences on your field. You're selling, corporate sales on the fact that this event's going to meet their expectations. You're selling something every single day you come to work. You just don't realize it because you're doing in your head. You're like, oh, I'm an operator. I'm maintaining the field. I'm setting up for success. But you're selling expectation is what you really are when it comes down to it.
I thought about it after we spoke, and one of the reasons that I think that you could look at this both ways, right, is that I think the reason that we don't give ourselves credit is that we're very good at magnifying and seeing failure, right? Like we our own worst enemy, all that kind of stuff, right. But on the flip side of that is like there's not a whole lot of industries that you get as many reps as we do to like fail, learn, observe, grow, and just iterate, and keep going. And like that's the whole so what was the Outlast? I can't remember the game of Outlast.
The game of Outlast.
Well, explain the game of Outlast to the panel here.
So there's a couple sides there, right? Like you see, in this industry, there someone's always going to outlast somebody else, right?
Yeah.
Like, and they're waiting for a job, and they're waiting for this, and they're waiting for that. And 5 years of Outlast becomes like, well, gosh, this guy's got to retire. This guy's got to quit at some point. Like, I'm going to hang around forever, and I'm going to get that job. And you see it. I'm not trying to sugarcoat or make fun of it. It's prevalent in this industry.
Very much.
But there's a lot of people that they've waited that 5 years, that 10 years. One, they skipped probably the best years of their career. They've been most marketable to go anywhere else. And that's why, like, when I was in Texas, I had a job I could have sat under Dennis forever. He's still there. He's in a fantastic role. I could have done that the rest of my career, but it was like, God, do I really want to play like 30? Like, look at it. I'm 25 years old at that point. I'm going to play 35 more years of Outlast for Dennis. Like, he's 10 years older than me, right? Like, you can play that in any position, but how much more miserable do you get further down the line? And you control your destiny. At some point, you just have to, it's the old, crap or get off the pot thing. Like,
well, and I saw that very much in the public sector, where it was a couple of things. Ryan, you had to eat a certain level of BS to ascend, right? To be able to put up with and withstand and outlast. And I love that term. I'm going to totally co-op that. It's going to be great. But the other thing is that you would have folks that would play the game of Outlast, but would also get the golden handcuffs.
yes.
Where it was like, I got too much vacation time built up. I got my pay is not gonna isn't capped out. I'm gonna keep getting raises. It's like, I get it. I mean, I get it to a certain extent, and you get retirement. There's a lot of things, and I walked away from all that. And I'm one person. I'm not everybody, but I think that's something else. Is people feel like they get trapped where there is no way out.
Is what it is. Like, you're just so deeply entrenched that you're like, wow, is it going to be more of an uphill to walk out of here and to like go to the next job?
Yeah, that tipping point.
And so they play the way game in their head of like, all right, what's good, bad, and ugly with this, and can I sustain this for another 10, 15, 20 years?
You guys are inspiring me to quit.
I was literally just about to say.
Really going to make people quit. That's
The
what
way
we're about
that
to
Chris was just looking at you and you were saying that last one, I was like, oh my God, he's having an epiphany. His 2 weeks are coming in.
Via text message. He didn't get it yet.
He's literally there. Oh, wait, there goes Chris. He's actually getting up. He's walking over to the 7-Eleven to buy $500 in scratch offs and pen his resignation letter.
Why is he walking up a mountain?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
jeez.
It's a long way down, man.
Sorry, I wanted to ask you one question because you talked a little bit at the top of the episode about awareness, but like in a groundskeeper job, like sometimes it's about head in the sand, like getting through the day, like one step foot in front of the other. So like what did that look like to become aware of like the situation you were in? Was it somebody else like bringing you and being like shaking you and being like, look at what we're doing here? Or were there certain practices or methods that you became a more self-aware person?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I've got a.
You go first. I've got an answer too.
So I don't know. In our industry, we're a very humble group of people, but there's also a group of people that are on the opposite end that have very limited self-awareness. And maybe I've noticed it more since I've been in sales, but it's one of those things that like, as an industry, like you have to realize where you stand in that threshold of it of like you said it, Ryan said it in the presentation. He's like, we all have to have an ego to an extent in this industry. You have to have an ego to survive. You have to have an ego to excel in this industry. Just like anything else, you have to be proud of what you do, but man, you got to be really careful with where that second edge of the sword. Yeah, where that second edge of the sword lands in on there, because I don't know. I mean,
well, that's what I think the phrase I used or whatever was that the ego is your ego is the rocket up your rear end that carries you to that dream job.
Yeah.
And then you get there, and usually it's the thing that's either gonna, drive you to push your head in the sand just to get through, right? Because like I can't quit. I'm not a quitter. I'm this. I'm that. And then it's also the thing that's gonna get you in trouble, where like you have so much pride, so much ego in your field, your staff, whatever. You lose your mind on somebody, or something goes sideways, and it just evolves from there. So like I don't know, the awareness piece for me first was this is way back when I started Field Source, was like, dude, chow down, by the way.
Housing it over here.
He's all of his inhibitions have been released.
Is that like a bagel bite or what?
Yeah.
What
was that song?
Pizza bagel.
I was going to say, remember that
Pizza
song?
bagels.
Pizza in the morning, pizza.
I saw him in the corner. I'm like, and you guys inspired me to get up. So I
his
just
headphones.
Well, it was
For a bagel bite. For one bagel bite. Too.
Yeah.
It's not like you load it up.
We're gonna
One
actually
solid
take a
bagel
1 minute
bite.
break while Chris mutes everybody else, and he's gonna eat this pizza bagel on AS.
I thought about bringing some for everybody.
All right. Anyway. So
Jeez.
we could do this for like 3 hours. We really could. It was a total crap show. All right. So 2018, my wife has our second child, her daughter, and I get 6 weeks off, and I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, man, I don't want to go back to work. And that was like the first time that I ever said that in my life, because I love work. And I was like, I don't want to go back to work. And then I started thinking about, well, why don't you want to go back to work? What is it? And, it came down to, more or less, I'm unemployable. I don't like working for the man.
This is the greatest term, unemployable.
I cannot relate to that statement more. Like,
I don't like working for the man.
Authority really.
And I would rather, because that's the thing, is like there's like 18 layers of other people above me that are going to say what I should do, and it's all got to filter down. And like that just really rubbed me the wrong way. And so I would rather it just be, okay, hey, me and a customer straight across the room. If I'm doing a good job, you're going to pay me to do what I'm doing. And if you're not, you're going to give me honest feedback, or you're going to fire me, and I'm going to be out, and I'm going to have to go find somebody else. And you know what? I can live with that.
Yeah.
I can live with the realistic nature of A to B, person to person. Like that works for me. So it just went from there, and it took me a while. It was literally like the week before the whole world shut down during COVID. I was like ready to quit. My boss knew everything the whole time. Like he was like, all right, hey, and it was like right before that, he's like, hey, you might want to hold up for a minute. And I'm like, yeah, I think I'm just going to chill and just not do that yet. So it took a whole nother like year, 15 months, something like that of working through it. But it did give me a chance of like, to really check myself before I wreck myself kind of thing of like, hey, like, are you really sure this is, how you're going to do this and what you're going to do? So I go through that, and I think I just mentioned it, but I think that's a good thing for everybody to do, is to have the gut check moment. Look at yourself in the mirror.
For me, the COVID year was so weird, right? I've been in baseball at that point 13 years. We always joke, you get institutionalized, right? You're used to the schedule. You're used to like what's a weekend. The PR guy at the Reds used to say it. Once the season starts, man, every day's a Tuesday.
Yeah,
like you don't know what day of the week it is.
You're the Brooks of Shawshank.
Yeah, exactly. Every day's Tuesday. You don't know what's going on. You just do the same thing every day, And so not having baseball that spring was so, it was all of the terrible things with COVID going on, and everyone's, free, you're trying to figure out how the world's moving forward and all that. But like, everyone asked me like, what'd you do? I was like, oh, well, the way they scheduled, one of us could be at the ballpark, like only one person. So we'd go, I'd go in, I'd set up the batting cage by myself for like one guy to come out and hit. And that was it for the day. You go mow, and like, oh, yeah, we need you there for 8 hours. We need someone to keep an eye on the place. I'm like, what's going on? There's nothing here. We have no events. But, I just had my second child at that point, and it was like man, I see all the things. Like, you got the taste, right? You're like, I got a taste of what, like, normal 9 to 5 was. And I was like, man, I would love to, we got the season coming. I'm obviously going to hang in through that year, but just, it was that taste of freedom that I had never seen. And for our family, at least, that was a gut check for me, DeMay. It was like, I didn't know what to do. My wife's like, wow, so you see how the other half lives, and I'm like, oh yeah, 100%. But it definitely, I would say, probably moved my timeline ahead on it, because it was like, I spent those first 6 months with my daughter where, traditionally I would have lost the second 90 days of it. We'd have been into baseball and I'd be half awake, and it was super meaningful for our family, and really kind of in my head pushed that timeline ahead.
Yeah, and so you take all those stories and you extrapolate it out, and so we talked about in that session about how do you know what you're worth and what are you really good at, and I think that's the tough part, and that's where we talked about reach out and have somebody or some people. Honestly, I tell you, it's no smoke, no. But I think you would be a good person for these folks to confide in, right?
Look at that.
No, I'm serious, because
industry psychologist. That's what
seriously. And I think she's got enough exposure to it. It's good because you're still far enough away.
Yeah.
You're not too close to the sun, and you can give an objective. And I think you understand our psyche and our makeup and like what drives us and everything like that. Because I've heard you say things that whether it's on the podcast or asking questions, the way you ask questions is very probative in a good way. And that tells me that you're thinking about, okay, hey, it's not just about like what's on the surface, but what's beneath.
Definitely.
And that's really what you have to do with that whole skill assessment, because it's like, hey, the sales thing, I mean, that was probably part of it, of like, hey, like, it's not the right situation. This aren't going to be people that I mesh well with, what have you. And so how do I go about doing that? But, the changes that you're talking about making, it's like, it could be a change in compensation, it could be a change in hours. So like, not everything's equal amongst like, oh, I'm just going to go there and I'm going to make $1 more an hour. I'm going to make, I get a company truck. Like, those are all great things. But if you haven't like sat down and thought, what am I good at and what do I really want to get out of the situation? That could be tough.
Well, we talked scary a little bit earlier. The scariest part for me in moving over, like I knew my skill set. I had a decent idea what I was good at, what I was bad at, but the biggest piece was like we're moving our family back to Michigan.
Yeah.
I've been entrenched in Cincinnati at that point for 5 years, 6 years. Hi, Jay. And no, it was like, in our company asked, they said, you're going to sell a large amount of lawn care. You're going to sell to sports turf managers. We know those are your people. Like, that's your wheelhouse of people. Like, we get it. 70% of your book of business is going to be something how much do you know about it? How much do you know about that market? How do you know the players up there? Any of that kind of stuff. And ultimately, they gave me the chance to figure it out, and that was one of those things that I was like, I know given time, that's less scary to me. But now I look back and I'm like, man, I just relocated 300 miles north, and I hadn't been a member of the Michigan SFMA in 10 years at that point, or 15 years, whatever it was. You're talking about going right back in and completely starting from scratch in an industry that, other than on the national level, that I've been well involved with for a while. So, I don't know. That's
a feat.
I love it.
It was fun. I mean, like I said in the presentation, it's like, no one, I walk into a lawn care shop anywhere in Michigan and I tell them, oh yeah, where'd you come from before you started the ATS? Oh, I was a head groundskeeper of the Cincinnati Reds, right?
Mic drop.
And no, it's
the reverse.
It's the reverse, right?
Yeah.
Because one of our reps asked me that like 90 days in that job. They're like, oh man, isn't that just awesome? You can walk in and draft that. I go, what do they care? Like you walk in and they're like, so I do lawn care in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Like, what does that have to do with
What's
it?
your price per bag on your diming?
What's your 3006 running right now?
They're keeping you
cut
humble.
a quarter off that, Like,
I love it.
It's just,
I love it. Well, I appreciate you guys sitting down, talking with me. I owe you a visit here in a few months, so we'll continue that conversation. But I am glad I got to hear the full enchilada on that story. I don't
Thanks
know.
for having us,
I don't know what it's been, but that's been my new coined term this year.
The enchilada?
The enchilada.
Yeah.
Must be craving them. I'm hungry at this point of the day.
Yep, there's a restaurant you can go to here in town. They call that The Roof. So go check that out. I'll show you where you can get that.
I'm
Also
there.
some pizza bagel bites over there in the corner.
Yeah,
so.
we saw that in action, live in action here in Palm Springs, folks. Well, thank you guys.
All right, thank you.
thank you.
Thanks.